They could shackle his legs, but they trembled before the vastness of his mind. Epictetus was born into the cold shadow of slavery, navigating the decadent and cruel courts of ancient Rome. His body was not his own, and his destiny seemed written in the scars upon his back. History tells us that his master, in a fit of senseless brutality, deliberately broke his leg, leaving him to limp through the world for the rest of his days. He possessed nothing, he commanded no armies, and he owned no land. Yet, when he looked into the eyes of the most powerful men in the Roman Empire, he did not feel envy. He felt a profound, silent pity for them. To Epictetus, these men were the true slaves, chained to their lust for power, their fear of loss, and their hunger for a status that could vanish in a single breath. He, the man with the broken leg and the empty pockets, was the only one who was truly free. But how could a crippled slave teach emperors about freedom? How could someone who didn't even own his own body become the greatest master of human autonomy? The answer lies in a truth as ancient as it is disturbing. Most of us spend our entire lives as prisoners of cells we built ourselves. The invisible prison of the human mind. You wake up in the morning, and before you even fully open your eyes, your mind is already populated with worries. The medical diagnosis you received last week, the bills that never seem to diminish, the children who don't call as often as you'd like, the body that no longer obeys as it once did, the loneliness that settles in like a cold fog at dusk. Epictetus understood something that most people take a lifetime to discover, or never discover at all. You are suffering not because of what happens to you, but because of the story you tell yourself about what happens. The pain is real, yes, but the suffering, that burden that crushes your chest and steals your sleep, that is a choice. A choice we make unconsciously, repeatedly, until it becomes our second nature. In the words of Epictetus himself, men are disturbed not by the things that happen, but by their opinions about the things. Reflect on that sentence for a moment. Let it penetrate the deepest layers of your consciousness. Your suffering does not come from external events, but from your interpretation of them. It is not the betrayal that destroys you, but the story you tell about what it means. It is not the disease that imprisons you, but the weight you assign to it. The body, a borrowed vessel. Epictetus looked at his own mutilated body with the objectivity of a philosopher and the serenity of a sage. When his master tortured his leg, the story goes that he said calmly, "You will break it." And when the leg finally broke, he simply said, "Did I not tell you that you would break it?" Where was the scream? Where was the anger? Where was the hatred that would consume any normal man? Epictetus had understood a fundamental truth. The body is merely a temporary container, a garment we wear briefly on this earthly journey. You are not your body. You are the one who inhabits the body. Perhaps now, as you listen to these words, you feel the pains that came with the years. The knees that ache when climbing stairs. The hands that tremble when holding a coffee cup. The vision that is no longer so sharp. The strength that seems to evaporate like dew under the midday sun. And with these changes perhaps comes fear. The fear of becoming a burden, the fear of dependence, the fear of losing your dignity. But listen to the whisper of the slave philosopher across the centuries. Your body may weaken, but your soul need not diminish. Your body may be limited, but your mind can expand until it touches infinity. The chains you fear are not those of age or disease. They are the chains of attachment, of the mistaken identification between you and this vessel of flesh and bone. Epictetus taught that there are only two categories of things in the universe, those that are under our control and those that are not. Your body inevitably belongs to the second category. It will age, it will sicken, it will die. These are not failures, they are simply the nature of material things. To resist this is like shouting at the ocean to stop making waves. The true definition of freedom. In the marble mansions of Rome, senators writhed with anxiety. Emperors, with all the power of the known world in their hands, could not sleep at night, tormented by the fear of losing everything. Rich men schemed and conspired, destroyed friendships and betrayed families, all to accumulate one more handful of gold they could not take to the grave. And there was Epictetus, possessing only the tunic he wore, observing this theater of the absurd with calm eyes and a peaceful heart. He had discovered the secret that escapes most of humanity. True freedom has nothing to do with external circumstances. A man can be in a palace and be a slave to his passions. Another can be in a prison and be freer than any king. Freedom, Epictetus taught, is the perfect harmony between your will and reality. It is accepting what cannot be changed with grace and acting with determination in what is under your control. It is not wishing things to be different from what they are, but working with what you have. Think about how many hours you've lost wishing the past were different. How many nights of sleep were stolen by worry about futures that never came? How much of your vital energy was wasted trying to control the uncontrollable, the opinions of others, the weather, the economy, the actions of people you don't even know? Epictetus invites us to a radical exercise in honesty. Take a complete inventory of our life and divide everything into two columns. On one side, what is genuinely under our control. On the other, everything else. And then, and here is the liberating part, completely stop worrying about the second column. The invisible chains of others' opinions. There is a form of slavery more insidious than iron chains, dependence on the approval of others. How many decisions have you made not based on what you believed was right, but on what others would think? How many words have you swallowed? How many dreams have you buried? How many versions of yourself have you betrayed? All for fear of the judgment of others. Epictetus saw this as the most pathetic form of slavery. If you are distressed by anything external, he said, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Think about it. At this very moment, you can free yourself, not from your circumstances. Those may take time to change, but from the tyranny that those circumstances exert over your inner peace. You can decide right now to stop allowing the opinion of others to dictate your worth. You can choose to see disapproval as just that, someone else's opinion, not a universal truth. In ancient Rome, there was a practice where freed slaves still carried brands of hot iron on their bodies. Epictetus observed that most people, even when free from physical chains, still carry the psychological marks of slavery. They free themselves from one master only to become slaves to 1,000 others, to fashion, to public opinion, to the fear of appearing inadequate. Finding peace in the twilight of life. There is a particular beauty in the wisdom of Epictetus for those walking in the second half of life. When you are young, there may be the illusion of total control, the fantasy that with enough effort you can bend the world to your will. But the years bring a kind of forced humility. You learn, through losses and disappointments, that there are greater forces at play. This may be the greatest gift of aging. The opportunity to finally let go of what was never yours to hold. The children you raised with so much love, they have their own journeys now. The body you inhabited for decades, It is following its own nature of returning to the earth. The career that defines so much of your identity, it is just a station on a longer journey. Epictetus teaches us that we can look at all of this not with despair, but with a kind of sacred liberation. Each thing you release is one less chain. Each expectation you abandon is one prison from which you escape. He said, "Do not seek to have events happen as you want them to. Instead, want them to happen as they do happen, and you will have peace." This is not passive resignation. It is active wisdom. It is choosing peace instead of futile resistance. Imagine waking up tomorrow without the need for anything to be different, without wishing your body were younger, that your finances were more robust, that your relationships were less complicated. Simply accepting what is and finding within that the space to act with virtue and dignity. The invincible fortress of the mind. Epictetus taught that there exists a place within you that no external force can touch. No matter what life takes from you, your health, your wealth, your loved ones, there is an inner sanctuary that remains inviolate. This is the realm of your will, your character, your capacity to choose your response to any situation. This inner fortress is built brick by brick through daily practices. Each time you choose gratitude instead of complaint, you strengthen your walls. Each time you act with integrity, even when no one is watching, you add another layer of protection. Each time you forgive instead of holding grudges, you expand the territory of your inner peace. Roman emperors lived in constant paranoia, building ever higher walls, hiring ever more numerous guards. And yet they slept poorly, always fearing betrayal, invasion, loss. Epictetus, without physical walls, without guards, without riches to protect, slept deeply because he had built a fortress that no army could assault. The eternal legacy of a forgotten man. Epictetus died without leaving a single word written by his own hand. Everything we know of him comes from notes by his students, especially Arrian. He had no famous name in life, built no monuments, conquered no lands. He was just a man who limped, who had been a slave, who lived simply. And yet, more than 2,000 years later, his words still echo. Emperors have been forgotten. Empires have crumbled, monuments have turned to dust, but the wisdom of this humble man continues to transform lives, to free minds, to calm troubled hearts. Why? Because he touched on something eternal. He spoke to that part of us that does not age, that does not die, that remains constant through all the changes of life. He reminded us of who we really are. Not these temporary bodies, not these passing circumstances, but the eternal consciousness that observes all of this with serenity. A message for you now. Perhaps you came to this video carrying a weight. Perhaps life has been hard lately. Perhaps you feel you have lost more than you have gained. Perhaps the future seems darker than bright. Epictetus would look at you with those ancient, wise eyes and say something surprisingly simple. You still have everything that matters. You have your capacity to choose your attitude. You have your integrity. You have the freedom to respond to each moment with grace or with bitterness, with fear or with courage, with pettiness or with generosity. No one can take that from you. Not disease, not poverty, not betrayal, not death. This is your impregnable kingdom. This is your true wealth. This is the freedom that no tyrant can revoke. The shadows may be growing longer in the twilight of life, but do not mourn what is being taken away. Instead, cherish the fortress that remains within. You are more than this aging body. You are more than these changing circumstances. You are the conscious presence that witnesses all of this, and that presence is eternal, inviolable, free. If this journey into the depths of ancient resilience has touched your spirit, consider walking this path with us by subscribing to our circle of wisdom. Because the greatest discoveries are often made in the silence of the heart. And remember, you may be wearing chains, but your mind, that cannot be chained by anything in this world.